Il-wara nofsinhar it-tajjeb. Eżis parteċipanti huwa l-pjaċir tagħna li nilqakom magħna fil-webinar tal-lum dwar tagħlim esperjenzali. Dan il-webinar huwa parti mill-proġett tal-programm Erasmus Plus dwar l-appoġġ għall-assigurazzjoni tal-kwalità Ewropea fl-edukazzjoni u taħriġ vokazzjonali. L-Awtorità ta' Malta għall-Edukazzjoni Avvanzata Ogħla hija l-punt ta' referenza nazzjonali ta' dan il-proġett. L-għan ewlieni tal-webinar dwar tagħlim esperjenzali huwa li jgwida lill-istituzzjonijiet tal-edukazzjoni u taħriġ vokazzjonali, lill-għalliema u lill-istudenti dwar kif it-tagħlim b'esperjenza jista' jappoġġja u jtejjeb l-impenn tal-istudenti. Dan billi jipprovdi opportunitajiet diversi għal kollaborazzjoni u żvilupp, kemm żvilupp personali u anke professjonali. Is-sena tal-ħiliet tippreżenta ċans li narfu s-sinifikat tal-ħiliet ta' tkabbir, għal żvilupp personali, għall-integrazzjoni tas-soċjetà u għall-avvanz ekonomiku. Toffri pjattaforma biex tenfasizza l-valur tal-ħiliet fil-waqt li tiġbed l-attenzjoni tagħna għal ħtieġa ta' tagħlim kontinwu f'ambjent globali li dejjem jevolvi. L-iskop tal-edukazzjoni għandu jkun li qarribna dejjem iżjed flimkien biex nilħqu għanijiet komuni ibbażati fuq għarfien u innovazzjoni. Dan sabiex jiġu stabbiliti futuri ġusti u sostenibbli li jagħtu priorità lill-ġustizzja soċjali, ekonomika u ambjentali. Dear participants, only the introductory speech of this webinar was in Maltese. The webinar will be in English. I thank you all for joining us today, and I wish you a fruitful afternoon. Just before we start introducing our experts, I would like to say a few words about the ECAVET project that MFHEA is taking part in. This is only one of the 6 tasks that this project has. The other tasks are, and we will soon be announcing developments in this regard, the development of definitions, principles and guidelines for quality assurance in work-based learning. We have also developed an external quality assurance audit manual of procedures for higher education in VET. We are in the process of developing a national handbook for VET providers, including guidelines on self-assessment and internal auditing. We are also contributing to data collection and analysis based on the ECAVET indicators. And finally, MFHEA has actually collaborating with other countries to exchange and benefit from peer learning on quality assurance. As I said, we have 2 experts with us. They are online. They will be giving the training on experiential learning, who are Ms. Ivana Tasic and Dr. Carlos Grima. I invite Ms. Tasic to start her presentation on what is experiential learning.
Hello and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for this warm welcome, and thank you everyone who has joined us. I will share my screen now so that we can start the presentation. So, to start this introduction on experiential learning, I would like to show you first a short video by one of my favorite educators, Mr. Richard Louv. He is an advocate of learning in nature, and he claims that all of us suffer from nature deficit disorder, or how he calls it, the vitamin N deficit. So let's watch a short video that has a quite strong message, in my opinion. And I invite you to pay attention to the message behind the video, but also to pay attention of the number of the activities that children are involved in this video. So I will go on and play the video. Afterwards, you can tell me your impressions and comments on the video. Yes, before I share the video, I would also like to invite all of you to please feel free to share any comments, examples, experiences, because we would like to hear from you and we would like this webinar to be interactive as well. Thank you very much. Let's go on to the video.
when I get the class outdoors into nature, the troublemaker becomes the leader, not just well-behaved, the leader. I hear that over and over again. It raises the question, what are we doing to these kids by keeping them in the classroom all the time, in that cubicle, at that chair, taking test after test after test, canceling recess, canceling field trips, all with this theory we're going to make a better child if we do that to them. But what proportion of the huge increase in the number of kids that are taking stimulants for their behavior might have something to do with the fact that we took nature away from kids in the first place?
So thank you for listening. Could you tell me if you have any impressions, any opinions of what was shown in the video? If anyone would like to share? Not for now? Yes, go ahead. The volume was not really good. You had a problem hearing the video? Oh, I'm very sorry about that. Should I replay the video? And we try again. Anyway, we can watch the video later on if you like once again, or we will share this presentation with you so you can also watch it in your free time. Basically, you have seen the number of activities the children are involved in. And the main message behind the video is that once we take children in nature, even the children who are troublemakers in the classroom become leaders. The reason why I have showed you this video is basically just to give you some examples of experiential learning. When children or any type of learners are in nature, that becomes a truly experiential learning classroom because children and learners are forced to interact with the environment around them. So this is a primary example of experiential learning in practice. To continue with the presentation, oh, sorry about that. More and more we see in countries such as Finland, Denmark, United States, and Australia, wood kindergartens or wood schools, which again force the children to interact with the environment, to get involved in the experiences around them, to get their hands dirty, and to learn in this way. So once again, this is the prime example of experiential learning. I would like now to hear from you. I would like you to think of a moment when you have learned something new and actually enjoyed learning it. I would like to hear, how did this learning process happen? How did you go about acquiring this new knowledge? And which tools were used in this learning process? I invite you to share if you have any examples. No one would like to share at the moment?
So can I just mention two aspects? One was when I actually was involved in a gardening session. So we were being taught how to garden. So that was a very hands-on, and we learned, and you know, it was literally contact with nature, using the different tools and so on. And another one was, it was for educators, and it was learning how to use an app. So it was actually getting the feel of what the students would feel and getting to know how to use this app. But it was again related to nature. So it was going around in a particular place. And it was very hands-on again. I don't know if it relates. If I answered your question.
Yes, yes, this is a very, very beautiful example, both of these examples. What I would like to hear from you is, how did you feel while doing these two activities, comparing to learning in the classroom?
you experience more. For example, I don't know, if you're watering something, you know that if you give it too much water, you're going to kill a plant. Whereas if it's dry, the basic skills, you know, you are actually learning by doing. Whereas the app was the same, getting to know even digitally what to do next. Even for us educators, it's good to know, to get the feel of what the students will engage. So it's not just using, okay, we'll be doing this, and then something happens that we don't know how to guide them because we haven't tried it out. So even being digitally literate, or not even only digital, but the questions that are being asked by particular applications. So obviously you learn much more if you're a kinesthetic learner, but obviously if you are much more of a sit down, you will learn probably less if you are disgusting of touching, of getting your hands dirty. So you have to keep in mind all the time the different type of learners, right?
Very good.
So,
very good. Thank you very much for your input. Someone said during teaching practice as part of the B.Ed course, that was Carlos, right? Carlos, you said it. Okay. Ivanka, oh, similar name to me. Ivanka, would you like to share?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Yes, basically something that's very recent. So I remember very clearly, and it was a very interesting experience. Is I went on a guided tour to Egypt. I'm very glad that it was a guided tour. We had a guide with us, and whenever we would go to the sites of the ancient Egyptians, you know, he would explain the history, and would explain the context. And I found I really enjoyed that. And I think part of it, I used to read a lot about the Egyptian civilization books when I was in school, that's why I went on the tour. But when you're on site and when you are using
Donatella, could you please mute? Thank you. Sorry, Ivanka, sorry.
It's okay, no problem. So basically the fact that you're not only using your you're not just listening to a lecture, but you're actually seeing, you're interacting, you're asking questions, you're on the site, you can actually view the artifacts. I find it a much more engaging, a much more stimulating experience, and one that helps me remember more than if it were just more abstract or just by sitting in a classroom.
Very good, very, very good. I love your example because it shows that you have kind of used all of your senses to learn, and that is exactly what experiential learning is. So thank you very much. You have kind of said one of my points before I came to it, so thank you for that. We have Audrey. Audrey, you would like to share?
Yes, good afternoon. My experience was a recent training. I work in the Realm of EU funds, and we had training on detection of fraud and anti-fraud training and this kind of training. It was actually in a classroom, but the trainer that we had used unconventional training aids. At one point, he brought out a chainsaw, for example, a toy one, because he came from abroad, and he said the last time he tried to transport a proper chainsaw, he was stopped at customs. So he has a toy one, and he used these training aids that I never saw anyone train before. It was 2 whole days of training, but they were 2 whole days where we were all attentive and engaged all the time. It was very interactive. He was giving us real life situations, challenging us, to try to detect where there could be signs of fraud, where there could be signs of misdemeanor, and these things. So it was in the classroom, but it was very, very interactive, and we were not just hearing or listening. It depends on what you choose to do, either listen or hear. But we were also touching and participating actively, and it was very interesting. It was worth the money that the organization spent for us to get the training, for sure.
This is beautiful, amazing. I'm sure that you will remember this training for much longer time than any other just training where is, you're sitting down and listening to someone talking. So very effective teaching method, very, very effective. Okay, very good. Thank you very much for all these beautiful examples. I will have to move on because I have limited time, but we can hear some more examples at the end. So please keep them in your mind and then we will hear them later on. So I will give you some theory and definitions of experiential learning very briefly because you have basically proved all of my points and said them before I did. So experiential learning, like you said yourself, is learning by doing, by actively having experiences, and then those experiences get imprinted into our minds and help us retain information and remember facts longer. Experiential learning involves learning from doing, sensing, feeling, thinking, and changing. It is nothing new because the history of experiential learning dates back to Confucius philosophy. And Confucius himself said, I hear and I forget, I see and I remember, but I do and I understand. And if I'm not mistaken, you will all agree that understanding is the higher form of learning. So this is basically, Confucius was first proponent of experiential learning. After the Confucius, we have different experiential learning theories. One of them is Kolb's experiential learning cycle, and we will hear more about this cycle later on in the webinar. However, I will skip some definitions because I'm running a little bit out of time. But basically, one of the most comprehensive definitions of experiential learning, in my opinion, was given by Dr. Colin Baird in his doctoral dissertation, which was published in 2017. He said that experiential learning is a sense-making process of learning that actively engages the inner world of the learner as a whole person, so physical, bodily, intellectually, emotionally, and spiritually, with the intricate outer world of the learning environment, which is nature, place in which learning takes place, and social and political environment as well. Now, for you to understand a bit more his definition of experiential learning, he has presented it as a learning combination lock. And I personally love this model because it contains of 6 different cogs, which can be turned in many different directions. And this gives us thousands of ways in which we can implement experiential learning in practice. So I am particularly fond of this model because it also talks about interaction between external environment, which is a left part of the model, which is the learning environment and learning activities that we learn, and the internal environment, which is basically internal world of the learner, emotions, intelligence, how the learner changes while he learns something, which is the right side of the model. And in between, the green part of the model, the yellow part of the model are senses. So basically the interaction between the external learning environment and the internal environment of the learner happens through senses. And one of the examples of the travel to Egypt basically mentions a lot of interaction with the environment through the senses. So it fits into this model perfectly. I have included some more information about the model, which you can look through when you receive this presentation. But basically, as a summary, I would say, experiential learning is a connection between personal development, education, and work. And it is a lifelong learning process because any experience that we go through, whether in our personal life, education, or work environment, is an opportunity to learn. So I will stop here for now and give floor to my colleague, Dr. Carlos Grima. He will tell us a bit more about benefits and challenges of experiential learning, and then we will take it from there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You'll have to stop sharing so that I will be able to share myself.
Sure, sure.
Perfect. Okay, okay. So, what Ivana was talking about, the theoretical aspect, this is how it looks when one applies it in practice. It can take many different forms. They are all different kinds of experiential learning. Okay. So if these concepts and these practices that Ivana explained are applied at school, they will look like hands-on activities, role play, outdoor education, any kind of vocational courses, any kind of training that takes place in a lab for sciences, for example, cooking and home economics, and all the other different ways in which hands-on learning can take place. Now, this can take place in schools, and it can also take place in higher educational institutions through internships, through community service learning. These could be elements of a course. These are integrated in different kinds of courses. Clinical education, undergraduate research experience can be a kind of experiential learning. Community-based research experiences, where students cooperate with local organizations to conduct studies to meet the needs of a particular community, for example. Fieldwork, definitely. A very strong and successful example of experiential learning. So this is usually used in subjects such as anthropology, archaeology, sociology, social work, earth science, and several others. Studying abroad, we have this throughout today within secondary schools, within primary schools, and even within courses and degrees through Erasmus Plus, especially. Practicum experiences in several subjects, teaching practices. This is my experience as a graduate teacher of hands-on and experiential learning, and I can vouch that it was the most successful and the most useful part of the degree, because you really learn when you are hands-on. Volunteering is also part of several degrees, even locally, and the outputs are very positive. It is worthwhile to include an element of this within a degree course. Now, why do we bother with experiential learning? Because research has shown that the benefits can be very many. First, and you already mentioned several of these. So the benefits include our discovery that through experiential learning, the learning process becomes more effective. You learn more, and you learn deeper through experiential learning. Why? Because it is active learning. The moment you are more involved, the moment there is more interaction, the learning process becomes more effective. Hands-on tasks in experiential learning require students to utilize, furthermore, critical thinking, problem-solving, decision-making skills, and these all are part of the active role as opposed to passive, and they are all elements that strengthen. So you can see experiential learning boosts student creativity because no student is waiting for an answer, because during experiential learning, the whole point is to make mistakes, to learn from your mistakes, and to find alternative solutions to the problems you're being given. And that is how the learning process takes place. Ivana shall go into the cycle of exactly how this occurs in a bit. Students face situations, different learning experiences, where problem solving is constantly tested, allowing them to use their creativity to resolve issues. This engages the brain's creative side, improves confidence as they learn to solve problems with their own solutions. Another very important strength of experiential learning, it gives students all the 21st century skills and all the even social and collaborative skills that employers require, and that sometimes employers seem to criticize schooling, that the general education doesn't emphasize enough these very, very important aspects of education. Through experiential learning, students learn not to fear mistakes, because mistakes become part of the game. When you're learning by doing a mistake is what is expected, and therefore this becomes part of the process. It's nothing to be ashamed of, unseen. So mistakes become part of the process. Experiential learning generates positive attitudes towards learning and strengthens motivation. When you feel, and students will feel, that they are learning and they can see their own progress and they can self-assess and they can better understand even their own mistakes, that will strengthen their motivation. The more motivated they are, the more students are engaged. The more the student is engaged, the more that student will learn. This is proven, throughout and through several theories. So, positive attitude towards learning. Experiential learning often provides opportunities to practice and therefore develop collaboration skills, especially because not always, but very often, experiential learning is done in groups, and therefore it's an excellent opportunity to develop one's collaboration skills, which are very sought after by employers, but they are part and a very integral part of every student's holistic development. So learning along with others is something that we want, and it is something why we wish and we see that experiential learning is so useful. So experiential learning enhances reflective practice. This is also part and parcel of the experiential learning cycle, is to reflect on what you're doing, to reflect on your successes, to reflect on your mistakes. And it is through that reflection and through the interaction you have with your teacher and with your classmates or the people around you, if you are on a place of work, that will enable the learning process to move on and will enable learners to learn. So reflective practice, I'm sure I'm not the first one that I'm mentioning this. Increasingly, there is a lot of literature related to the importance of reflective practice in learning and in professional development, even of employees as part of CPD. So next, experiential learning helps learner to develop learning to learn skills. Learning how to learn is a crucial skill for today's citizen. It is a crucial skill for lifelong learners, and we want to develop lifelong learners. That is one of the major aims of the general education, but also of continuous education. Every education institution's life will be easier, every teacher's life will be easier when our students are better equipped and better able and better independent learners. So, because through experiential learning, we can teach every student to develop the skills to find information, to develop the skills to communicate, to develop skills to network and work with others, think analytically, assess the needs of others, solve problems. Those are all key skills that enable the independent learner, and therefore they enable everyone to move on as a lifelong learner. And that is very much something we want and we need as a society. Experiential learning can improve common classroom management issues. This we see it a lot, even in, for example, in VT subjects that manage to focus and engage those students who are very difficult to engage otherwise. But because we try hands-on learning, experiential learning, it is an excellent approach to reach those students whom we think are usually more difficult to reach, let's say that. So experiential learning has this further advantage. Experiential learning also builds self-confidence and self-reliance. There is increasing literature about the fact that the more strength and belief a student has in himself, in herself, the better that student is in studying. A lot of literature about this, and unfortunately also the other way around. Every student who has lost faith in his or her ability to be successful, the concept of resilience, for example, that is usually, unfortunately, a mark of a student who will not be successful. So we need to push students to help them to strengthen their self-confidence, to strengthen their self-resilience, and the belief in themselves. And experiential learning is one of the many ways in which this can be done. So as you can see, this picture is important because very often students are lions. They have all the power and all the ability and all the strength to be successful, but they don't feel it. And so it's up to us as educators, and experiential learning can be very helpful here to empower our students and, to support them so that they are successful. So that was the part about all the reasons why we promote experiential learning and why we bother. In this short section, we should be talking about the reasons why experiential learning needs some planning. It needs some planning. It has huge advantages, as I have just presented, but these huge advantages, they come at a price. And the price is the additional planning that is needed to maintain, manage, promote, format such learning experiences. For example, experiential learning requires strong policy infrastructure, standard operating procedures of which parts of a course, which learning outcomes, which aims, which targets will be covered through the experiential component. You will need to see that students are able to behave during the experiential component, and that needs to be taught. You need specific student support systems, because very often through experiential learning, students are not with you closed in one classroom, so you're there ready to help everyone. Something else that would need a little bit of planning: worthwhile places to enable experiential learning may not be readily available, and that will take time, so that every educational institution builds its own network and connections on where these experiential learning experiences can take place, and that may also be a little bit time consuming. Experiential learning may require more resources than direct instruction, for the very simple reason that few approaches can be cheaper than simply showing how it's done. So it's not the most effective, but it is the cheapest way, the chalk and talk approach. Experiential learning needs resources, needs time, needs places, needs people. The success, so it is worthwhile, but those benefits do come at a price. Members of the teaching staff may require specialized pedagogical training, because if you are a teacher who teaches through experiential learning, will need to go through a process of unlearning some of the teaching approaches that they have learned and learn new ones. Teachers would need to be trained to select suitable experiences, to move away from direct instruction, which is an approach they may have been using for many, many years, and employ instead an approach where they pose problems, set boundaries, support learners, provide suitable resources, ensure physical safety, facilitate the learning process. They would need to learn to wait, and that may not be easy, to wait for the student to go through the process, to enable the student to make mistakes, to give feedback, immediate feedback on the mistakes and on the way forward for every student, to use a method that is encouraging for students, instead of giving the answer immediately, through questioning, allow the student to find the correct path. So there are specific teaching approaches that belong pedagogically to experiential learning opportunities. So it may also require careful orientation and preparation of students, high level of coordination with all the stakeholders that suddenly would need to be involved, restructuring of teaching, even just to see the balance between which learning outcomes will be achieved and how. And experiential learning, because it is more immediate learning, and very often learning that's happening either within the industry or, on the place of work. So we're at the cutting edge of providing the service, not within the theory corner of the classroom. And therefore, everything needs to be, regularly updated. We need to keep up to date with the industries or with the whatever area, whatever subject we are working in. And that's okay. There are many potential ways to, yes, training to teachers will also need to include training on, because experiential learning is, of course, assessed differently than chalk and talk within a classroom. Therefore, you would need your teachers and the whole system to embrace different kinds of assessments, which may include summative assessment, but which definitely will need formative and ongoing types of assessment, and different kind of assessment, depending on the kind of experiential learning one is employing. Okay, perfect. So those were the strengths of experiential learning and some challenges that we may find when we try to employ experiential learning. And I think that makes us right on time to the minute. So we have done the first part of this webinar, and now everyone has a short coffee break. We're sorry we cannot offer coffee ourselves.
Yes. Thank you, Carlos and Ivana. Yes, as you're saying, Carlos, we're going to stop for a short break, a 15 minutes coffee break. We'll be meeting again at 3 o'clock.
Thank you.
Hi all. If it's okay, we can start again. Welcome back.
Yes, go ahead, Ivana.
All right, thank
You
you.
can proceed.
Thank you. So, after Carlos's very interesting presentation, I would like to talk to you about one of the most widely currently used models of experiential learning, and that is Kolb's experiential learning cycle. Now, Kolb claims that every experience that we go through is an opportunity for learning, whether it is good or bad opportunity. He has presented in 1984 a sequential cyclical model of learning in his book called Experiential Learning: Experience as the Source of Learning and Development. Now,
Sorry, your sound is very poor. I don't know if it's from my end or you sound really far away.
Okay.
I don't know if
hear
it's
you.
only Meta, maybe it's my sound.
I can hear you clearly myself.
Yeah, from here it's fine as well. So I think
Yeah, well as well.
an
You
individual
may
problem.
increase the volume of your
Mine is
computer.
clear as well.
I think Ivana,
Try
Okay,
to-
don't worry. Maybe
Yeah,
it's
try
mine.
to
So-
increase the volume.
yes.
I can shout more if you like, but but it might bother other people. So just try to increase the volume and hopefully this will fix the situation. Sorry about that. Okay, so Kolb's experiential learning cycle consists of 4 stages of learning. And these are concrete experience, reflective observation, abstract conceptualization, and active experimentation. To make the cycle a bit more user-friendly or a bit more, let's say, easier to understand, you can look at the figure on the right. So basically, the cycle talks about going through concrete experience and then reflecting and observing on what happened during the concrete experience, forming abstract concepts and generalizations or theories about the experience that we have gone through, and then testing the applications of those concepts in new situations. Just to make you understand this more, I think that we all go through when we deliver either webinars or lectures or presentations ourselves. So delivering the presentation would be concrete experience. After the presentation or a webinar, you probably reflect on what has gone right, what has gone wrongly during the presentation. So this is your reflective phase. After that, you would form theories. You would think, okay, I need to improve on this, or I need to adjust my material in such a way. So you would form a theory about what happened. After that, you would probably adjust either your method of delivery or the material that you are delivering and go through experience all over again, deliver the adjusted training to another group of participants. After this adjusted training, you would again go through the cycle. Again, you would reflect on the experience, get some feedback from the participants, adjust the material, and the cycle continues all over again. So basically, the idea is that with each experiential learning cycle, you have learned a new information and you have adjusted either your method of delivery or the material that you are delivering so that you can make it even better and better with each cycle of experience. I don't know if this is clear, or are there any other questions here or any other examples that you can think of? I am open for questions if you need further clarifications. Okay, I'll continue, and maybe at the end we can have some questions and comments. To simplify the cycle even further, you can think about it as doing, reviewing, learning, and then applying what we have learned in a new situation. This is the most simplified version of Kolb's experiential learning cycle. To take matters even further, Kolb basically talks about 2 opposing modalities of learning. One of them is grasping of the experience, and the other one is transforming of the experience. So you can see them. Grasping the experience is one of the arrows in the figure, and transforming the experience is the other arrow. Grasping the experience refers to basically the way in which we receive the information from the environment around us, while transforming experience, is how we interpret and act on that information. To put it in simple terms, Kolb said that learning is like breathing. It involves taking in and processing of experience and then putting out an expression of what has been learned. Now, there are two opposing forces here at play, according to Kolb. So when it comes to grasping the experience or taking in the information, some of us prefer to take in the information by being involved in concrete experiences, or basically getting our hands dirty and getting involved in whatever is happening, while others prefer to think about, theorize, and form theoretical concepts about that experience. So these are two opposing modalities of how we take in the information. Now, there are also two opposing modalities of how we transform that information. So one of them is by active experimentation, so actively implementing whatever information we have received and seeing how it works in different contexts. While some other people prefer to basically withdraw, reflect, and observe and see what happened to other people who are involved in experiences. And this is their preferred way of learning. In any case, you don't need to remember all of these opposing modalities. The main point here is that when it comes to learning, we have to choose. We cannot have both of these modalities happening at the same time. For example, we cannot drive the car, which would be concrete experience, and read the manual on how the car works, which would be abstract conceptualization. So we always have to select what is our priority in a given situation, or how we feel most comfortable to learn in that situation. Now, the fact that we have to choose between these opposing modalities means that we all have learning preferences. Kolb calls them learning styles or preferred learning styles. So it is very important to know our learning preferences because they give us an idea about our strengths when it comes to learning. However, they can also give us an idea about our weaknesses or what are the learning modalities that we need to further develop and work on. Because Kolb basically claims that for the most effective and successful learning to take place, all four modalities or all four stages of the experiential learning cycle need to be in play. So we need to go through the full cycle of experience in order to really learn something new. Okay. However, like I said, because of the opposing modalities, we all have learning preferences. Now, based on the learning preferences, Kolb has come up with 4 different learning styles. He talks about accommodating, diverging, converging, and assimilating a learning style. Diverging learning style feels most comfortable learning by using concrete experience and reflective observation, so feeling and watching. Assimilating learning style feels most comfortable using reflective observation and abstract conceptualization, basically watching and theorizing about things. Converging learning styles feel most comfortable using active experimentation or doing and abstract conceptualization or thinking, while accommodating learning style uses concrete experience, feeling, and active experimentation or doing. Now, this all sounds very complex and it is not very easy to remember all of these different learning styles, accommodating, diverging, converging, and assimilating. And that is why, luckily for us, Honey and Mumford have actually improved Kolb's theory into a different, basically, they've changed the names of the learning styles to make them simple to understand and simple to remember. So we have 4 different learning styles according to Honey and Mumford, which are activist, reflector, theorist, and pragmatist. I think this is much more user-friendly theory because it is very easy to remember that activists enjoy learning by doing. They're very active while they're involved in the learning experience. Reflectors prefer to observe and to reflect. Theorists prefer to hear the theory or form their own opinions and theories about the experiences that they go through, while pragmatists are very hands-on, experimental, and they like to see the applications of the information in different contexts. Now, based on this, I have decided to put both cycles next to each other to give you a better idea on how they compare. Based on this, would you be able to say which one of these would be your preferred learning style? I would like basically everyone to write down what you think is your preferred learning style based on this. Would that be okay? Do you feel comfortable doing that? Good. Thank you, Yannicka, for sharing. You don't need to share with me. If you like, you can, obviously. Reflector, okay. But just keep it in mind, because we will do a short exercise which will actually show you what your preferred learning style is. And I'm very curious to compare what you have written now with the result that the exercise will give you. Okay, so either share in the chat or write it down and keep it for yourself, whichever you prefer. Very good. I'm happy to see that you are sharing, because it shows me that you have understood the concept of learning styles. Thank you for that. Very good. So before we do the activity, let me just go through what actually influences our learning preferences. So according to Kolb, what influences our learning preferences are our personality types, and you can find out what your personality type is by doing Myers-Briggs type indicator, which can even be found online. Our early education, so the way we were taught how to learn and process new experiences from an early age. Our professional career, because sometimes our career exposes us only to one specific way of learning or one specific learning environment, and also current job role can do the same. And another factor is our adaptive competencies, because some of us are very adaptive and can use different styles of learning in different situations according to the requirements of that situation, while others are very rigid and try to use the same exact learning style or learning preference in all of the situations where we find ourselves in. So this is what influences our learning preferences ultimately. Now, let's go through an activity and do something fun. I'm going to share in a chat, sorry about this. I'm going to share in a chat a short questionnaire, which I would like you to complete on your own. I will give you 20 minutes. You can score it, and this questionnaire will show you your preferred learning style. Okay, then after the questionnaire, there are short descriptions of each learning style, which you can also read. I would ask you to read the one that applies to you. And then we can discuss and share what you have found out through this questionnaire. Let me just share this in the chat. Give me a second. I'm not sure how to access chat. Give me 1 second. I will stop sharing for a second, okay? Okay, so here it's easier to send a message to everyone. I will be sending you a file now. Okay, here we go. Please open the document and you can score it even on the document itself. I will give you 20 minutes for this activity, if that's okay. So let's say until 3:35. If you have any questions or need further clarifications while doing the activity, please feel free to speak to me. Exercise complete?
I'm finished.
I am ticking on the table, all right? Just I mean the last one.
You are scoring the
Scoring, yes, the
questions.
scoring level.
Okay.
So I need a bit 2 minutes more, I don't know.
No problem, no problem. Has anyone completed the exercise or do you all need 2 more minutes? Rita?
I finished.
Very good, very good.
Not
So,
yet, sorry.
Not yet?
Not
I
yet.
give you 2 more minutes?
Yes, please.
Okay. So, Ronald, let's start from you because you were ready from the exercise. Have you had a chance to read this short description of your preferred learning style after the scoring?
No, not yet. I'm still scoring, that's why.
Ah, okay, you're still scoring. Okay, okay. Go ahead, go ahead.
Yes, please, thank you.
Okay, 2 more minutes. Okay, I have a very interesting comment from Donatella. Donatella, would you like to share with us?
Yes.
Okay, so you do not agree with the result, right?
No, but it is something that I studied, to be fair. It's something that I had studying at university, but I don't see myself as my result was as a theorist.
Theorist, okay. And what did you write?
And I don't agree with theorists.
And when I've asked you after the presentation about learning styles to write down what you
Yes,
think.
I chose activists and reflector.
Wow, so you chose completely opposing learning style than what your results show. Wow,
Yes.
This is very interesting. And in the results, was theorist really prominent preferred style, or did you get kind of equal score between different styles?
No, it was prominent.
Prominent, okay, okay. And you do not agree with it?
No, I hope I scored myself correct, right? but I mean, I studied in theory. I mean, I don't think I am a theorist.
Well, let's test this. So when you buy a new mobile or any technology, laptop, iPad, whatever you buy, what do? What is the first thing you do when you bring it home?
When I bring it home, I leave it a bit there, to be fair. Then when I have time, I open it, I charge it, and then switch it on.
And when you switch it on, what happens?
I don't know. I input all my data and start using it immediately then.
Okay, and why do you leave it there for a while? I'm curious about this.
Because I don't know, because when I usually...
Oops, I lost you. I cannot hear you.
Sorry. If I buy, for instance, a mobile, usually I still use my old one, you know, until I don't know, until I leave it a bit new. But to be fair, I don't know. When I am an impulsive buyer, so most of the time, the things I buy, I have them already. So they are usually double, triple, you know.
No, I mean, my point was that if you were an activist, you would probably immediately switch it on and start pressing on the buttons, right?
Mm.
The moment that the thing that you leave it a bit to kind of stand there shows a little bit reflective tendencies.
Mm.
Okay, maybe you need to process, think about it, and then you start using it, right?
Mm. Yes, yes.
Do you read the manual?
It depends on what. I mean, if it's a mobile, no. If it's a laptop, tablet, no. Usually what I do is ask someone who has the same product.
To tell you what?
To tell me how to use it or to show me how it goes about. For instance, if I don't know, when I started using iOS, I asked someone who uses an iOS, sorry, an iOS.
And then you observe them, right? To learn.
Yes, exactly.
So again, very strong reflective tendencies. So I don't know, your results do not match with what you really do, but it could be that your work experiences or your early childhood experiences have kind of programmed you to think more in theoretical way.
It could have.
It could be that's why
I studied theories. I mean, so I think that reflects a bit, no?
Exactly, exactly. Very good. I mean, I am really happy that this happened because obviously these tests are not perfect. So not everyone will get the perfect score. Some people might agree completely with the score. Some people might completely disagree with it. They are there to give us an idea. But if you personally do not agree with the result, I would rather that you listen to yourself because you know yourself better than any test can tell you. Okay, so let's hear other feedback. So someone said, Audrey said, I totally agree with my result.
Yes, in fact, when you had asked us to list what we think, I had wrote activist or pragmatist. And the tendency came out to be that I'm a pragmatist, but it's not a strong preference. It's a moderate preference that is coupled slightly lower with activist. So I got it right.
But
and
which
I
one
agree
was the strongest? The strongest tendency?
The pragmatist, the strongest.
Pragmatist. Okay.
And when I read the definition, I agree with what the definition says. That's how I work normally. That I can identify myself. Let's put it that way. And the pragmatist approach.
And which one was the lowest score that you got?
The lowest is theorist.
Theorist. So it is important that you know your weaknesses and your strengths, okay? Because ideally we have balanced score across all 4 of these styles. Ideally,
it was pretty balanced. Then it was because my highest score was 12, then 9, another 9, and 8. So it is pretty spread out.
Very good. That is very good. That is the aim.
Slightly, the pragmatist is slightly above all the others, so it is pretty balanced.
Very good. So you can call yourself an effective learner because basically when you have a balance more or less between all the styles, that is a very adaptive learner who can easily adapt to different styles of learning and different situations they find themselves in, and different delivery styles as well.
I hope to be an effective tutor as well, because that's the
well, we will see about that, because normally how we learn is how we teach others. So
yes. In fact, I get that feedback from the trainees I have, that I tend to teach with my work experience and deliver the learning outcomes through my personal experience. So it's pretty, I apply what I did in my 30-year career to what I need to deliver to them. That's what I get normally.
Very good. Good job. Good job. Keep it up. Thank you, Audrey, for sharing. Who else would like to share? Ronald, I'm curious.
I'm ready.
Yes, please.
Basically, a reflector and theorist, 13 and 13. It's not I mean, like a number, but it's 13.
And what did you write when I asked you guys to write what you think is your style?
Pragmatist, but it happened to be very low. It's 8.
Oh, okay, okay. And is that the lowest score?
No, the lowest is activist 6. In fact, activist is 6, but it's low. But the pragmatist is considered very low because the numbers are not equivalent. So the 8, it doesn't mean it's not low. It's considered very low.
How much
According to
did
the
you get
table.
on the theorist?
The theorist 13 and 13, both.
Oh,
equal.
13 and 13. Yeah, well, yes, comparing to 13, 8 is a bit low. Yes, okay. Do you agree with the score? Do you see yourself as a theorist?
I am basically an engineer, so I'm more sort of, I'm a reflector, I'm an theorist, but I do a lot of practical things. So I do a lot of practical. I look at the real situation. So, but here it happened to be pragmatist, very low.
Okay, so basically your challenge would be, if the score is correct, because again, I said the score is not perfect always, your challenge would be to push yourself to get more involved into experiences,
Exactly.
rather than thinking about the experiences that others are going through.
Thank you.
Okay, very good, very good. Who else would like to share? John, Rita, would you like to share? John, maybe?
Yes, I will share. Yes, of course. I got 14 as a reflector. Then I got 10 theorist and 10 as well pragmatist, and activist 8. I would see myself, yes, as a reflector. However, I thought I get more points on the activist side. I don't know.
The fact that I called you to speak and you did not volunteer.
No, but I
volunteer.
No, no. I was going to volunteer anyway. Just
okay.
I was giving some space for others. I was just trying to be polite.
So you wanted to first observe and then to jump in. Well, that is a bit
Yes,
of a
yes.
reflector tendency. Sorry.
Yes.
Okay, very good, very good. Thanks for sharing, Rita.
Okay.
John, would you like to go next?
Sure. I picked that I was a pragmatist, and it turned out that I was, with my highest score at 15, an activist being 13. And curiously, though, reflector was my lowest at 4.
Wow.
Yeah, so perhaps I don't reflect enough.
Exactly. That means that you need to challenge yourself every time you go through experience. Take some time and reflect on it. Think about it, see what you've learned from it, Do you agree? I mean, do you really function like this?
I think I do. I have a long career in fire and EMS and flight medicine. And so it's being very, very big, and that's the educational world that I live in. So it's very much about concrete, applicable tasks rather than theoretical. So much of it is time limited that I think the pragmatist is probably correct.
Very good. So basically you have to
and the reflection happens after.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Sorry for interrupting.
No, that's fine. Yeah, no, a very quick turnaround time, I think, makes that very accurate for the way that I approach things.
Exactly. So your career choice and your daily tasks have basically influenced you in a way that now you think more about the action, how I solve something, how something functions very fast, and you don't have enough time for reflecting because of this. Okay, so it shows one of the points that our career really does influence the way we approach new experiences and new learning. Thank you, John, for sharing. Okay, I have time for maybe 2 more sharings, if anyone would like to volunteer. I see, is it Charlotte Seychelles? Charlotte, go ahead.
Charlotte Seychelles, yes. In fact, I was about to unmute myself. The highest score is 16, reflector, which is a strong preferences according to the table. And then second comes activist with 10, which is a moderate preference.
Okay.
I was expecting a higher score for activist, but I think it's quite actual. In fact, these two tendencies are. I think I would consider the results quite accurate, because I tend to reflect before I act, but then when I decide to act, I act. So
Very good. And which one was the lowest score?
lowest score was 8, theorist, and pragmatist 10. So they are both low preference. So I don't have any extremes. I don't have very strong or very low.
No, you
Quite-
don't. You don't. So you are pretty balanced, with the reflector being the highest tendency.
But I was expecting activist. I was expecting a higher score. I'm a bit disappointed.
No, but there is no need to be disappointed.
No,
because
just joking.
all of the preferences are good. So there is no bad one or better one or things like that. We all learn in the way that we feel most comfortable. So please do not be disappointed. That's
No,
the
but I was
point.
just joking. But about reflector, about the reflector thing, now that I was reading the descriptions, I really think that it's very accurate. In fact, when it comes to meetings, for example, usually when I lead meetings, I always tend to decide to be the last one to talk. I always prefer to let everyone discuss, and then finally, usually I'm the last one to talk. That's the way I usually lead. Whether it's a training session, whether it's or a meeting or whatever it is, usually I tend to be the last one.
And usually, let me guess, your input is the most valid one.
Hopefully, but
Is it?
I let others others do that.
Usually my experience with meetings is that activists jump in and start fighting and talking and expressing experiences and not really seeing what's really going on. And then after all this fighting and commotion, at the end of the meeting, when everyone is tired of fighting, reflectors step in and just with one sentence solve everybody's problems.
Probably yes. Probably yes. The thing
This
is that
usually
people.
my experience of
Yeah.
meetings.
The thing is that a lot of people listen to answer. They don't listen to understand.
Exactly.
And that's something which I usually emphasize in my courses. When you listen, an active listener should listen to understand, not to give a reply before the other person has even finished.
Exactly. That's why reflectors are very good to have at meetings. Very, very good, because they will just hear everybody's opinion, condense it together and express it in one sentence at the end of the meeting that will be, aha, everybody's problem solved with that one sentence. So very good. Thank you. Thanks for sharing, Charlotte. Let's have one more person who would like to share and then we continue. Anyone? I can call out names, but I prefer that you come forward. Who we did not hear from? Edward, would you like to share? Is Edward here? Edward Gatt?
Hi.
Hi.
Okay, thank you for this webinar. It's really interesting. So actually, when first told us to write down what we think we are, I wrote that I'm a pragmatist. And actually, the final score is that I got 15 points as a pragmatist.
So you guessed correctly.
Yes, and then I got 11 as an activist also, and 11 then as a theorist. So
very good. Wow, very balanced.
And nine as a reflector. So it is
very balanced.
Quite balanced. Yes.
Very good. Very balanced score.
And I quite agree with it. I quite agree with being a pragmatist and an activist. My learning style is like that.
Very
Yes.
good. It's good, Edward. Well done. You are very balanced
very much.
learner. So good job.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
So I will continue now with the presentation. We share. So now that we've heard and found out about your own learning styles, we can go a step further and look into the role of the educator. I have already mentioned while discussing with one of you that how we learn is usually how we teach. And Kolb agree with this, of course. That's where I've learned it from. So Kolb has, based on our learning preferences and learning styles, actually come up with the educator roles as well. So educator roles are here presented in the context of a Kolb's learning cycle as well. Kolb claims that based on our learning preferences, we become one of these 4 different types of educators. So we can be either a facilitator who is warm, affirming, promotes inside-out learning, and creates personal relationships and dialogues. We can become a subject expert who is reflective, authoritative, systematically analyzes and organizes subject matter, and uses lectures and texts. We can be standard setter and evaluator that uses objective, result-oriented activities, sets performance objectives very clearly, and has very structured learning evaluations. Or we can become a coach. Coaches usually prefer applied collaborative teaching. They prefer to work one-on-one with the learners, and they provide feedback and development in context. So first question for all of you, do you know what inside-out learning is? If anyone would like to give it a try or guess, please feel free to do so. Because it says that facilitators promote inside-out learning. I quite like this concept. Should I tell you, or would anyone like to at least try? Ivanka?
Yes, could it be inside out that you sort of start with your feelings first, and then so what's going on inside, and how the outside would be your environment. So it starts with how I'm reacting to the environment. I don't know.
You are very, 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 very close, Ivanka. Very, very close. Would anyone else like to try, or should I tell you? Even if you would like to guess, it doesn't matter if the answer is not correct. I just like to hear people's opinions and what you think.
Perhaps it has to do something with behavior of the participants. I don't know. You try to understand their behaviors.
Well, behavior is something, well, yes, observable. So it would be outside, okay? But you are missing the inside factor, okay?
All right, and the feelings, behavior and feelings. I don't know. I'm just trying.
You are close. You're all very close. So let me tell you. Basically, inside-out learning is starting from what the learner already knows and building on that. So it would be our task to first find out what the learners know and then start from that point. Or another definition would be basically teaching the learners based on what they are interested in. So again, we would need to find out what the learners know and what they are interested in, and then use that as a tool for further teaching. I mean, there are schools in Finland that teach using video games, for example, because they've realized that the new younger generations are interested in video games. So they said, okay, that's their interest, and let's create educational video games for them and use them in schools. So this is a very good example of inside-out learning. Okay.
So you teach in a particular way to like to reach all the participants, you mean? in this sense.
Not only that, you would start from what the participants already know, and you would also explore what their interests are and use those interests to teach them other concepts.
Yes.
Clearer?
Yes. As a matter of fact, I was thinking now, when you are explaining, I was thinking that I sort of use that method when I have sessions online. For example, I noticed that some people would rather see slides. Some others would rather like to participate in order to understand better. And others would prefer, for example, a video clip to understand.
Exactly.
It's like a multiple way of getting across the knowledge, sort of.
Exactly. Very good example. Thank you, Rita. Thanks a lot. So let's continue with the presentation. Basically, here you can see what Kolb taught, how the way we like to learn influences the way we like to teach. So basically, reflectors, those who prefer reflecting learning style, would most probably teach in the way that facilitators teach, okay? Activists would be very good coaches. Pragmatists would be good in standard setting and evaluations, and theorists would be good subject matter experts. Okay, now when you see the comparison between these two and keeping in mind your scores for preferred learning styles, would you agree with this or not really? For example, if your preferred learning style is activist, do you see yourself really using the techniques that coaches use to teach others or not really? Rita, I will use your example because you said that your score was quite balanced, right? Do you remember correctly?
Yes. I had 14 reflector, 8 activist, pragmatist 10, and theorist 10 as well.
Exactly, so very balanced score. And you just told us that in your teaching, you use different methods. So you probably in different points during your lectures act both like coach, like facilitator, like subject expert, and like standard setter and evaluator. So if your learning styles would be balanced, most probably your teaching styles would be balanced. Do you agree with this?
Yes.
Very good, very good. Anyone else would like to comment? Let's get someone who had a very high activist score. Would you agree that you act more as a coach when you teach others or not really? If there is someone who had a very high activist score.
So if no one is going to jump in, I will.
Yes, please.
I said that I was expecting a higher score for the activist.
Yeah.
And when I was seeing this, I'm even more convinced now that probably I should check my questionnaire again, because I really believe I should have scored higher, because that's the way usually I conduct my training sessions. For the past 5 years, I've been giving training courses to job seekers mainly. And my approach is always, almost always, one-on-one, and trying to give them feedback as much as possible, but individually, not as a group.
Okay.
So I really believe that I really believe in personalized feedback. So, and that's why I think that I should have scored higher here, because when I say that provide feedback and development in context, for example, that's exactly what I do. Works one-on-one with learners. That's exactly what I do. But then on the other hand, I see the facilitator, which is the reflectors as well. No, it's warm, affirming, promotes inside-out learning, which that's what I do as well. And I also believe in creating personal relationships and dialogue. So even in my sessions, the relationship between my learners and myself is much more on the same level, rather than I am the sage on the stage and they are down there.
Excellent. That's very good. That's very, very good. Okay, thank you very much, Charlotte. Thanks a lot for sharing. Very good. Would anyone else like to comment, or should I continue?
Yes, this is the IDEA Academy
Hello.
curriculum team. And as you can see, we decided to attend this webinar together.
Very nice.
Rather than doing the exercise, because we had experienced it in the past. What we did is basically discussed where we can take it from here. So I think it was a good exercise to make us aware of where we are, where we will potentially be in the way we deliver. Unless, of course, we're aware of it a priori and we plan in order to make sure that we come out of that one established particular position, because we believe and agree that to provide experiential learning, we need to actually be all of those. Because it is not enough to provide the experience, but you need to be the facilitator to then take students to the next level and to reflect about that in order for learning to really happen. Because otherwise it would stop at just experiencing something, but not reaching a metacognitive level of what that experience actually means in terms of learning. So what we did here is, yes, as practitioners, we, because of our previous experiences, etc., we might feel more in our comfort zone in one of those boxes. But as professionals, then we need to re-educate ourselves to come out of that box, and at different times during our interactions with students, be all of those things, because otherwise we believe we would be doing a huge disservice to our students, and experiential learning will in reality be quite limited, if at all present.
Very
So
good.
that's what our discussion led to.
100% agree. And that was the whole actually point of this webinar. And thank you for making the point instead of me. I prefer when I see, participants come up with the conclusions themselves rather than me showing them the theory. So this is excellent. I agree 100%, and thank you very, very much for this contribution. Like we said, that we need to use all 4 learning styles to be effective learners. We also, to be effective educators, like you said yourself, we need to use all of these 4 educator roles. So we need to be, during the same lecture, we need to be at some point facilitators, at some point subject experts, and some point evaluators, and at some point coaches. So definitely 100% excellent conclusion. And I am sure that if you follow this, what you have all agreed to do, your students will be extremely happy and successful in their learning as well. So thank you very much. Excellent point. Excellent. Thank you so much for this. Brilliant. I'm very happy to hear this. So I do not need to do the rest of the slides. The main point has been achieved already. I'm joking. So I am not going to really go through a lot of these slides. I prefer that when we send you this, you have the time to read them on your own and read whatever interests you. There is a short description of each educator role here, but I'm sure that you already understood them, so we don't need to go through that. This is important. So a tip for educators is to organize your course or curriculum as a series of learning cycles to form a spiral of learning. The learning modes are revisited and learners' understanding is developed further each time. So your learners would discover more about the wider application of their new knowledge by taking what they have learned in one situation and using it in another. So we can completely restructure the learning cycle into a learning spiral where each new learning is applied in the different context and then another different context, and the understanding becomes greater with each new kind of part of the spiral happening. So in reality, the learning happens as a learning spiral and not really as a learning cycle. Okay, so let me continue. Learning obviously is a holistic, lifelong process. As a learning spiral, because like I said, we learn from all of our experiences, personal life, educational and work life. I just want to have a side note that in 2011, David Kolb and Kay Peterson wrote a book called How You Learn is How You Live. And they actually revised learning styles into 9 different learning styles, with the balancing learning style being the ultimate, like the most successful learning style, because it can balance and adjust to any given situation. But I am just mentioning this for those of you who might be interested to learn more about this. I will not go into too much detail into the 9 learning styles. I have included it in the presentation, so when you receive this, you can learn, you can read a bit about it. Like we said, learning flexibility is very important. So we need to be flexible and adjust ourselves to the situations in which we find ourselves when we have learning or teaching to do. I will also not go through these because I am sure you can read them on your own. What I would really like to do is actually share with you a very successful case of active classroom that applies everything that we have mentioned in this webinar. So this most active classroom was done by Finnish educator Jukka Sinemäki, and he has actually received an award for creating this type of classroom. I would like you to watch the video. I know we had problems with the sound before, but for this video, you don't really need the sound. You just need to have a look of what has Jukka created in his own classroom. Let's have a look. I mean, I don't know about you, but I was very impressed when I saw this video. I mean, I would have been ecstatic if I had the chance to learn in this type of environment. I don't know how you feel about that. I wanted to show you this because besides the learning styles, the educator's roles, Kolb also mentions learning environment as a very, very important point, because learning environment needs to be safe for learners to be able to experience the experiential learning and to go through all the stages on the experiential cycle. Because if we have anxiety about learning, if we have comprehension, if we have fear of making mistakes, the experiential learning cycle will not be effective. So for those who are interested, there are quite a lot of Kolb's articles that talk about different learning environments, but basically safety in the learning environment is one of the things that he pays a lot of attention to. So that is something as well to consider once you are creating your curriculum, once you are delivering your lectures, making sure that the students feel safe, that they are not afraid of making mistakes, that they are not afraid to express what they like, what they don't like, interests, their passion for different topics. So that also makes the learning more effective as well. So this was basically what I had to share with you. I have some other interesting videos, which if we have time, we might look at later. But now I would like that we open a discussion for all of us and share. I would like you to share your own thoughts, your own examples, your own ideas. I mean, besides the topics that are presented on the screen, I would like you to start by telling me maybe what is one thing that you can do tomorrow to make the learning more experiential for your students. Something very, very small that you can literally walk into the classroom tomorrow and do to make the learning more experiential. So let's start with that, and then we will open the discussion to other topics as well.
I'll share something if I may.
Sure.
We're moving towards more high fidelity simulation. And now that's not something I can just walk in tomorrow and do, but that's kind of been our focus for both as they're creating lesson plans as well as, you know, in the classroom, is to kind of just let the student go with a real high fidelity simulation and let them work their way through it, and then kind of do a wrap up summary at the end of it. So we just kind of throw them into a clinical scenario and let them kind of put together their learning and just kind of, it's, you know, it's just an immersive kind of experience for them. I think that's been really where we have to go, and it's interesting to do that.
And is there something, John, that you can do tomorrow to make the learning more experiential? I don't know if you teach yourself.
I do. I think one of the things I was just thinking about the way you're fleshing this out is that to give the student, you know, a lot of our education is driven on case scenarios and cases. And so to give them a more experiential, you know, with a case that's designed to let them really start to think about it and go from start to finish with the case rather than, you know, a more of a traditional lecture.
Okay, so present them with the case and basically ask them how they would deal with the situation in the case
Yes.
study.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good example. Carlos, I don't know if you would like to comment or add something on what we have been discussing so far.
I have the final small presentation about the examples of online experiential learning.
Very good, very
I
good.
think we can share this, which would be our final presentation, and then we can discuss. Coincidentally, it's very close part of it to what John just told us.
Excellent. Okay, okay, let's do that.
Perfect. So, experiential learning doesn't stop with in class or out of school activities. It can also move online. These are all, brand new, cutting edge, in line with what John was describing. So some ideas, if we want to implement experiential learning online, could be either assigning, for example, a real-world group project. For example, run a local environmental campaign where the students in groups would need to identify, analyze, conduct research, create, contribute to a website, develop a marketing plan, brochure, flyer, website. So these are ideas. The course can be fully online. So this can be part of hybrid course or part of a blended course or even an asynchronous course, because the assessment can be viewed tangibly, and it is an experiential learning experience. The student will go through all the processes that Ivana was just explaining, and this can be held at a distance. So this is one idea. You can assign a production, again in groups. So again, you have all the advantages of working together, of 21st century skills, of collaboration skills. This can be, drama, artistic, musical performance. And again, it is an example of experiential learning that can take place through online courses. Planning a scavenger hunt, again, group work activity, learning by doing, learning by interacting with people. So it's also constructivist. And these have all been proven, and these have been, tried and tested, and have been, those who have tried them have seen that they have been successful in enabling students to learn by doing. There are many contexts where scavenger hunts can take place. There are virtual tours and virtual exhibitions, for example, of museums. I'm going to show you one. It's literally just 60 seconds long, but it's a high resolution walkthrough of the King's coronation that happened last week. And you'll see the immersion of it and how helpful and how stimulating can be for students. It's only 1 minute.
Westminster Abbey has been the stage of every coronation in England since 1066. And in keeping with tradition, this is where Charles will be crowned king. Once he arrives, King Charles will enter through the Great West Door. His procession will step around the grave of the unknown warrior and continue through the nave, where some of Britain's most notable figures are buried, including Isaac Newton and Charles Darwin. This is also where some of the 2,000 guests will be packed in. The king will head through the choir screen with the organ above him and continue through the choir stalls. He'll then reach the Coronation Theatre, which is set at the heart of the cross-shaped abbey and was built to be large enough to hold these sacred ceremonies. The new king will sit on the 700-year-old coronation chair, which will be placed in the middle of the Cosmati pavement, a unique medieval mosaic flooring. He'll be sitting in front of the high altar with his back to the congregation. This is where most of the ceremony will take place, including the climax of the service when the Archbishop of Canterbury lowers the crown onto the king's head. Those who play important ceremonial roles will also stand here surrounding the monarch, including bishops, lords, and some members of the royal family.
So that's a useful teaching resource. Virtual, it's not experiential in the sense of hands-on, but it does help you and help the students to feel that, it's as if they were there. There are also virtual simulations that can be done through, of course, equipment. So you're not there, but the pedagogical process can still take place.
press the Start button to begin.
Obviously, you would need the equipment to be able to do this, but this is a contemporary example of experiential learning.
Look at these x-rays. As you can see, this is a significant fraction missing. See the patient's deep tissue. You will need to further dissect the deep tissue by using a scalpel again to make a deeper incision, exposing the fibula.
Because again, this is the application.
Look at the side of the patient's neck to verify.
So experiential learning can take place through real and virtual simulations, and they offer, as you can see, important opportunities. Flight simulations, for example, have been used for a very long time. This is also another interesting new opportunity. You may have heard the word gamification of the learning process. We're going to see 15 seconds of this video, but it is an example of applying science concepts that they would have learned throughout the lesson, and then through the game, and this is where the experience goes in and the choices that the students would have to do, they would be able to apply that knowledge. Voilà.
What would happen in a real world lab, but not just simple simulations. We would also create this for the students' engagement in the class. So we brought in game designers to create fun and engaging stories. For instance, here in this case, where the students have to solve a mysterious CSI murder case using their core science skills.
This is evident how engaging and totally absorbing it can be for students, and students get to experience and applying their knowledge, which of course will reinforce the learning process. Okay, yes, and then this is the final video I have. These are virtual tours, so we may not be always able, to visit museums in other countries, but today there are these virtual tours of these museums, which are very high resolution, and it is as if you have experienced going through the museum and seeing the artifacts. This can be useful in science, it can be useful in art. Let's just see like 15 seconds of this. So organizing a school outing is definitely one of our options for teaching experiential learning. But if that is not an option, virtual tours can be another opportunity to enrich the students' learning experiences with experiential learning. So we wanted to share these with you because perhaps not everyone is aware with the possibility of experiential learning through online courses, for example. But we can be creative and we can apply the pedagogical approaches that Ivana spoke about, even through online courses. Okay.
Excellent examples, Carlos. I really enjoyed them.
Thank you, Ivana.
Especially the king's coronation. That was extremely interesting. So
it makes you feel as if you're there. So it's quite powerful.
Yeah, very good. So let's hear comments, opinions. Again, what you can do to tomorrow, something small to make your teaching more experiential.
Can I butt in?
Yes, please.
What I'm a bit not very happy about is the fact that experiential learning gets sometimes diluted into hands-on. So hands-on is experiential, but experiential is not just hands-on. There are other ways. And I believe, and the reason why I'm saying this is that besides all the hands-on activities that courses and education, the education systems are including nowadays, I also believe that experiential learning has to come into the classroom. So even if the setting is still the classroom, because at the end of the day, that's what we have for most of the contact hours with our students. I come from, I teach at MCAS, so it's post-secondary. And it's a vocational school, and yet still a lot happens in the classroom. But I believe that even when there's a lot of theory involved in the discipline, the theory can be presented in an experiential way. And I think we cannot forget about that. And I agree with John that, for example, one of the ways I try to include a bit, let's say just a little bit of experiential learning in class is through the case studies. So through making the theory first very experiential, very applied, and then they reflect on that case study, then they need to, through their reflection, they're going to theorize about it. So then we can introduce the theory. So in relation to that experience, and then they're going to apply the theory again to yet another case study if need be. So this, for me at least, helps me overcome the limitations that I might get in terms of timing. So what I can do with my students in the allocated hours. So it doesn't have to be totally hands-on. There could still be the element of experience in indirect ways. Obviously, if the more so obviously I believe in, instead of hands-on, when it's not hands-on, at least it's brains-on. I believe a lot in that. So that they are doing the thing. So I believe in active learning very much. So they are the ones who are doing the thinking, the reflecting, the experiencing. They have to give their opinion about the case study, etc. So I just wanted to point this out, because I remember in the beginning when I was first exploring experiential learning, I had a very limited idea of it in terms of, my God, it has to be, hands-on, it has to be outside the classroom. But later, I realized that there's a lot that we can do inside the classroom in terms of experiential learning. So that is something I just wanted to share.
If I may, I agree with Janica. Ivanka, sorry, I can't. It's my age. I'm 52 now, so I find difficulties in seeing what's on the screen. And I agree with Ivanka, because especially at further and higher education levels, it's not only theory-based, obviously, but students are expected to engage with a lot of theorizing and papers and reading and what have you. So what you've said throughout the presentation basically comes together, not necessarily because they are using their hands, but they are using their experiences, each other's experiences, and that is where the safe space comes in, because they are establishing together with us a community of learning. So it's not just sharing my experience, but also drawing on the experiences of others, which makes the environment very rich, and the experiences of the expert who would be the lecturer, who would have a lot of experience in industry, etc., etc. So yes, I do agree with Ivanka. And what I feel is necessary from our end is to create the space where we provide the opportunity to engage with case studies, we provide the opportunity to present them with problems which they need to discuss, work together to solve. So that is where problem solving comes in. And to engage also with emotions. So in the case of health, for example, what would be the impact on stakeholders if we decide this or the other, and where do the theories come in? On which one would we draw in order to make this possible or that possible, etc., etc. So it's a combination of things, and yes, as Ivanka said, it's not necessarily fingers on, but very much brains on. So they are owners of their own learning, and I think that is the bottom line in all this, that they are actually made to be, with our help, owners of their own learning process. So it becomes their experience rather than my experience as a teacher. Pushed on them and expecting them to take it in. They need to be processing throughout the encounter with me and with their peers in order to make it their own learning experience.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Thank you. Thank you, lady.
If I may, I agree totally with what I don't remember the name. With Ivanka and the other lady who spoke just now. Hi, Nadia. I totally agree with her, and as a matter of fact, although I have adult, most of the time I have adult learners, so I try to get to know where they work or where they used to work, and every time they get there is something that needs to be learned, I try to get an example in relation to their work environment, either their organization, to make them feel that they first of all, they understand better the concept or whatever. And they will even participate more, then they will be more talkative, they will relate to you, their experience. And that will even help me to learn more about even organization and where they work, because sometimes you learn from students as well, from their experiences, because although you are a facilitator or a teacher or educator, sometimes you don't have all the experience all the students have. So it is a learning curve for us as well, I believe. Thank you.
Very good point, Rita. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Would you like to share something? Yes, Anashwara.
Anashwara. Hi, good afternoon all.
Hi.
So first of all, I like the examples you mentioned, the one from Ivanka of that smart classroom. I wish I had that in my school days. And the virtual one of Carlos I was about to mention. So mainly in our academy, we are more focusing on online learning. So when it comes to experiential and online learning, I must say, most of the people say it's quite challenging, but with the technologies we have, like the augmented reality and virtual reality, it's not that challenging as we think. So I believe that, there is more that we can do in online learning. So I have a small question. So basically, in understanding the difference between the ECTS credits and the ECVET, so the one which we offer to the vocational education and to the regular studies, I'm quite, still not clear. So, for example, a program, let it be a bachelor's program in computer science, it will be still using online tools, different methods of experiential learning. So how, we can find a line in between whether we should award a 90 ECTS or a 90 ECVET, or, how we will find a comparison there. That's my question. Apologies if this is the basic one. Just would like to hear from you.
To my knowledge, but Lawrence can correct me on this, ECVETs have been integrated in a way into ECTSs. So today, even VET subjects and VET courses can be designed through the standard Malta qualifications framework, which is in line with the EU one. So, and there are the guidelines that are in the 2016 referencing report, which we all know. One ECTS is 25
Study hours?
total learning hours, 5 hours for the actual lecturing. And you would need to find a balance, but the ECTSs will offer you all the design requirements that you need to develop and design a VET-based course, including for example, work-based learning, experiential learning, and all the different facets and different strategies that we want to use for students to make the course as relevant and as useful as possible. So to my knowledge, the tools are there, the course design tools, and then the framework within which we can build such courses.
Okay, and just to make it clear, one more doubt. So when we say the VET level, is there a limitation in levels, or can we provide the VET credits up to the level 7, or just to understand?
Mela, if you use the system of ECTS credits with the usual ratios of total learning hours, self-studies and everything, that will be good enough for the whole spectrum from level 1 to level 8.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much, Carlos.
Welcome.
Thank you.
All the details, the MFHEA can help you very much in all, the nitty-gritty of course design and all the regulations related to the Malta Qualifications Framework.
Agreed. Thank you.
Welcome.
Anyone else would like to share their small way in which they can make the learning more experiential? Edward, give us your ideas if you're still here. Edward, Gat, are you still here?
Sorry, I was a bit away from my laptop. I try to implement this in my sessions that I do. My courses actually they are very hands-on, because I do them in a particular sector, and they are for people working in this particular sector. So they are very welcome. They are very hands-on, and I get feedback a lot from their experience, and I share a lot from my experience in this sector. So yes, I do practice a lot of using their experiences, their actual experiences, to get out what we will be discussing, rather than theorizing and so on.
And which tools do you use, Edward? Is it discussion? Is it?
It's more discussion. It's more discussion. There will be some sectors which will be a bit theoretical. If I am tackling like some recent legislation and so on, which is more technical kind of, if I am explaining a new piece of legislation, it's more technical, obviously. There could be some discussion, but after all, the law is there. It was not me who did the law, and we have to obey that law. So that is a bit the technical side. But then there are lot of other aspects which we discuss it a lot, and I get feedback from my participants, and I take on the feedback even from their experience, because sometimes I have people attending which are new to the sector, so they are more receptive. But then sometimes I have people who have a good number of years experience, so I get a lot of feedback from there and a lot of different ideas also.
Very good. my personal challenge also is similar to what you mentioned, how to make teaching of law more experiential. Because at the moment I'm not really seeing the way, but I'm hoping
that's a bit of a problem. Because
yeah.
at the end, we are not lawyers, we are not the legal persons, but sometimes there are some regular legislation or so on that we have to kind of not to practice the law, but to be aware of what it is. And so that is the part where it's more me explaining, and kind of the discussion. There could be some discussion in it, but in the end, I didn't do the law. I cannot change it. It's there, and that's it. But that's the kind of nearly the boring part.
Thank you, Edward, for sharing.
Thank you, welcome.
Thanks a lot. Let's hear from someone else who did not speak yet. Gabriela Malia, are you with us?
Hello.
Hi.
I am here as well. I work at the MFHEA, so let me switch on my camera. Yes, I work at the MFHEA as a communications manager. And when I was hearing this, even though I am not teaching, but it is also applicable in the working environment. So even in meetings, this is also something I could relate.
Very good, very good. Okay, sorry for calling you up. I did not know where you work, so sorry about that. But thank you for your contribution as well. Very good. Thank you very much. Thanks. Let's see, Kevin Camilleri. Are you still with us, Kevin?
Yes, I am here. Sorry for not turning the camera on, but holding my daughter because she didn't want to sleep, so I had to hold her. But I was following everything.
Nice, thank you.
I work with Jobs Plus within the training division and quality assurance. Carlos, we already met. Sorry, because I got a bit confused.
What are your views on experiential learning, or anything that you have to comment on what we have been talking about today?
So this webinar was very interesting. I think the fact that we started with the different learning styles, even though most of us would have known that obviously we have different learning styles, I think it was important that, because sometimes you might have not a misinterpretation of our learning style, but it can help us get a clearer idea of how we learn and obviously how others learn as well. So, for example, how I learn may not be suitable for how another person learns. So, if, for example, we're teaching students in a traditional classroom setting, the fact that, for example, some students might fail from the assessments, for example, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not good enough. Just it could be that the delivery style, the teaching style, the learning style needed to be different.
Yes.
So that's
very
an
good point.
Important point. From my experience, I was never a teacher, so obviously I'm not into the delivering section. However, I was a youth leader some time ago, for quite some time, and these things you come to notice as well. Obviously, being a youth leader, you have more freedom than being a teacher with the curriculum, so you can do a lot of teaching soft skills, basically, through doing rather than theoretical. And I found that to be very effective, especially with youths coming in the evening after attending school, junior college, MCAST. Not saying that their lessons were boring, far from it, but obviously it was something different because they were doing things, actually doing them, rather than just listening.
Yeah, so they were no longer interested in hearing theory, but they just wanted to do stuff and learn new skills by actually getting involved.
Yes, exactly. Even for example, by simply playing a game, they would learn skills such as teamwork or communicating with others or listening to others, for example, not just I want to do something and I'll do it my way without taking note of what others will want to do.
Exactly. Very good, very good. Thank you very much for sharing.
I wanted to ask if Jobs Plus is still doing apprenticeship schemes, because that would be, experiential learning par excellence.
So it's not called apprenticeship scheme anymore because apprenticeship is being taken care by MCAST. But
Yes.
what we are offering at the moment are what we call traineeships or work exposure. They're two different schemes where basically students within the work exposure, we help them find a job placement, and they learn directly on the job. With a traineeship, they have part training course and part on the job training. So they're actually getting training by doing on the job.
Do you have positive feedback from students about their experiential experiences?
Mostly yes, because most of them, even after this scheme ends, they remain working with the same employer, or maybe move to a different employer, but within the same sector. So I would say it's quite good feedback which we receive.
Very good.
I mean, we are on a complete same wavelength, because I was just about to mention that recently we are seeing increases in institutions, even such as MCAS, Junior College, University of Malta, making work placements or internships part of the curriculum, part of the, getting a degree, completing a degree. And this is a very, very good move in using actually experiential learning, because like Carlos said, internships, work placements, they are experiential learning. So more and more experiential learning is being kind of included in educational institutions, which makes me very happy. I mean, I like when I see these initiatives quite a lot. Okay, Ivanka, you wanted to say something else?
Yes, because I come from MCAST, and MCAST, as you mentioned, have had apprenticeships for a number of years.
Yeah.
We need to be careful, though, that having an apprenticeship on its own does not mean that you are employing experiential learning, because what I've seen from my experience is if they're not doing the entire cycle that you've mentioned, Kolb cycles, or if they're only doing the experience part and they're not doing the reflecting and they're not theorizing and they're not reapplying, then it's useless. Then it's just, you're only taking 1/4 of the benefits.
Exactly.
I think that's something that I really want to point out, because I'm also a mentor on apprenticeships. And I see that some apprenticeships work for this reason and some don't, because we can't just fit in an apprenticeship and think that it's going to do all the work. There has to be, the cycle needs to be followed in all its aspects, even in an apprenticeship.
Yeah.
The thing that I mentioned, and it's much easier, like you said earlier, it's much easier to use experiential learning for skills than it is for theory. So I totally understand, like, how the hell do you make law experiential or the certain other very theoretical subjects. So not all subjects lend themselves to experiential learning to the same effect. But I still believe there are ways. So the idea would be trying to make it as not abstract as possible. So making the abstract more tangible. That's the whole idea behind experiential learning, when the nature of the subject is not skills-based and is more theoretical.
True. Ivanka, I have to comment that I am a little bit more optimistic about the apprenticeships than you are, because I somehow see them, especially the apprenticeships that MCAST is doing, because I somehow see them, correct me if I'm wrong, because obviously I don't work at MCAST, so maybe I have a different idea as an outsider, but I see them as in the classroom theory is covered. Then during the apprenticeship, there is a practical application of theory. And you also have meetings with the students and their tutors where you discuss how they are doing, what needs to improve, what needs to change, which is kind of a reflective part. So for me, somehow I seeing them already as covering all 4 stages of Kolb's experiential cycle. I don't know if you have different experience, but me as an outsider, I see them that they are already covering the 4.
In theory, they should be, in theory. In practice, it depends on the employer, it depends on the student, so it depends on the mentor. There are a lot of variables in the formula, and it's much more complex than it sounds. So because, for example, if you have a student who's doing the logbook and is not doing any reflective, but is just listing the tasks that are being given, it's useless. If you compare that to someone who's actually listing the tasks, is also reflecting, is also matching, okay, look, this might be linked to this particular theory that we've discussed in class, that's a totally different story.
Yeah.
And that depends a lot on what the type of tasks that the employer gives. And it also depends a lot on the type of mentoring that they're getting. So there are a lot of, as in, it's got amazing potential. I would not remove it for anything in the world, because it's something I myself didn't have at university, and I think it was lacking. So it has potential, just that we need to be a bit like careful. And at the same time, let's not make the class, okay, they have the apprenticeship, so the class is where all the theory happens. No.
No, definitely not.
A reflection of both in both places. So when they're working, they need to think about the theory, and in the class, when we're doing the theory, they need to think of the practice.
Very good, very good. Agree, 100%. Thank you. Thanks, Ivanka. I would like to hear from Ronald and then Charlo. Again, final reflections.
My perspective is that we started a number of years ago with video clips, as you showed. Now, today we can exploit the role of technology, enhanced learning, like Mentimeter, Kahoot, and these things to make the lesson more exciting. And I fully agree that we have to, while teaching and giving all the concepts, we have to apply them to case studies in different sectors, which involve different students, because nowadays I teach various levels of students. So let's take those students that work, so they have to understand and match the theory with the practice. I think all these issues were covered well with this presentation, but just I'm giving my feedback. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Ronald. Thanks a lot for sharing. Before we hear Charlo, would anyone else like to give any final feedbacks? Last chance. Okay, Charlo, go ahead.
Oh, I'll go ahead. For some time I used to teach drama, but it's not the mainstream theater. I used to teach improvisation and Augusto Boal's forum theater techniques. And the way you build these workshops, you use a lot of games. And these are all experiential. And I sometimes I try to transpose these games for my other courses as well. So I use games, and then from the game you proceed to discuss a particular topic. For example, someone during the webinar mentioned team building. It was very easy to use one of these games, and I used, for example, human sculpture. So you have sculpture made from the participants themselves; they become the sculpture. The human machine. So the participants, they build the machine using their bodies.
Wow.
And then from there, you take the activity from there, and you discuss a particular topic. It could be anything. Another tool I used, it was an EU-funded project for youth workers from these countries that participate in these Erasmus Plus projects, and I used masks. So each country, the participants from each country, they had some time for a workshop to build masks related to their culture, and they presented something related to their culture going around these masks. And then you open the discussion from there. It was
Very
about
interesting.
getting to know different cultures, for example. And I still
Very
remember, even though it's some years back now, I still remember the people from Spain. Their presentation was marvelous. And then the people from Sicily, the youngsters from Sicily. So you can use these, and these are all experiential because they are drawing up from their personal experience, their local context. For example, if I'm talking about team building, for example, one of the activities I use, I give a piece of string to all the participants. They hold one end of the string, but the other end, all the strings, they are tied to the same pen, and they have to draw something. So I tell them, okay, now draw an elephant, and they have to draw elephant pulling the strings. And then, as someone mentioned, then I think it was Ivanka probably, then there is the reflection part. If you don't reflect, it's just you playing a game. So, but you reflect. How did you feel doing this? Was it easy? Was it difficult? And all these activities I use, they always come with a reflection at the end. Otherwise, and someone else said we usually learn from our students. That's the way I always start my courses. I always tell my students, I'm not here to teach, but I'm here to facilitate the session, and I'm going to learn as much as you're going to learn. I'm going to learn from you as much as you're going to learn from everyone else.
Great attitude. Thank you, Charlotte. Thanks for great examples. Thank you very much. Well, would you like to give closing remarks?
Shall we pass on to Lawrence?
Yes, to Lawrence.
Yes, on behalf of MFHA, I would like to thank you very, very much for this very useful and interesting webinar we had this afternoon. Thank you, Ivana, and thank you, Carlos. Thank you as well, all the participants, for their participation in this webinar, and we look forward to meet you soon in other webinars and meetings organized by MFHA. Good afternoon.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.